Okay, I want to talk a little bit more about naturalism, but it's again from something that Sturgeon raises in this book. Um, this is a good resource to get if you can get it. Um, Essentially, what he's talking about, he goes through a lot of stuff about ethical naturalism here. One thing he does talk about is ethical causation. Um, in this part of his article on ethical naturalism, he says that, for one thing, placing a property in a causal network is a way of saying something about which property it is, even if one lacks an explicit reduction for it. A reduction in that, if we don't have a way to answer Moore's open question argument. First of all, ethical naturalism is saying that ethical properties, or ethical properties and ethical facts fit into a scientific worldview. They fit into science and the natural world, and that they can be investigated in the same way that scientific scientific facts can. So this can go to more realism or relativism, but not nihilism or emotivism or anything like that. It takes a yeah. It has to adhere somewhat to the natural world. It rules out supernatural things and God and all this. So Moore's open question argument, as I've talked about in the two previous videos here, is that he gives an open question argument in that if we have a moral property goodness, then there has to be something equivalent to it that is a natural property that is reducible to it, or equivalent, however you want to say it. Now, in the last video, I kind of talked about how you can be a naturalist while getting around this open question argument. Now, in this part here, he says, for one thing, placing a property in a causal network is a way of saying something about which property it is, even if one lacks an explicit reduction for it. So, like I said, one can be a ethical naturalist without reducing or making equivalent certain moral properties with moral properties with natural properties. I said in the previous video, you can just say that moral properties are natural properties without having a good account as to how each one equates or is reducible to natural properties. More important, a philosophical naturalist will believe that the mere fact that a property plays a causal role in the natural world provides a good reason for thinking that it itself is a natural property. So essentially, he's talking about ethical causation. If we put a moral property or an ethical property in a causal network. Now, a causal network being a causal network being, I guess, a chain of events of a sort, or a group of events as to how things work, as to how we get from point A to point B in a certain state or states of affairs. That is a causal network, a chain or a group, or however you want to enumerate what structure your causal events are going to work. So what is being said here is that again, you do not have to have reductions. You don't have to have what G.E. Moore says that you have to be a naturalist. You can just put a moral property within a causal network, and if it plays a causal role in the natural world, then this can say a lot. This can say a lot about what kind of property this is. If we put a moral property in a causal network within the natural world, and it plays a causal role, then we can infer and argue, and it says that this is a natural property. I want to say a little bit about this. For one thing, this is very true. I think, you know, natural world being, you know, like interaction between people, not like emotionally, but like in the natural world as to how, like for example, let's think about let's talk about environmental ethics. Personally, I'm a virtue ethicist. I mean, I'm not an ethicist, but I am sympathetic to virtue ethics, as if any of you have watched any of my virtue ethics videos. Let's say we're going to talk about we're going to talk about arete. That is the moral property I would use rather than goodness or rightness. If I was going to put arete as a moral property into a causal network within the natural world, and that would change how things would play out. If I put arete as a property into a causal network within the natural world, that could change how things work out. It could change. That could change how the world is, because let's say before putting arete into the whole thing, people don't give a shit about animals or the world or anything. They're gonna litter. They're gonna, use plastic bottles all the time, and pollute and drive their car all the time rather than getting somewhere else when you have this long to get somewhere, or any of that. Just killing animals for no reason, and having what is called in environmental ethics a dominant worldview, where we're using nature and the world as a means to our ends as humans, because we are stronger, I guess. Before putting arete in this causal network, it could very well be that the natural world is going to be in a worse off state. But then if I put arete in there, it could very well be that many people will make a difference, and then it will be the world in the natural world will be better off. So we could we could put in place of arete goodness, if you want to be a deontologist, if you're where you could put desire or pleasure or pleasantness, whatever you want to do. I don't think that the consequences ideas would work, but I personally hate consequences ethics, but that's just me. If we can put that in, if we can put this moral property in this causal network and have something change because of this one property, then we can make the case. Excuse me, I'm gonna get my charger. We can make the case that moral properties are natural ones. I mean, if we can make a difference in the world because of a certain moral property that's put in a causal network, then we can make a difference. Okay. All right, there we go. Anyway, maybe I can do this. Okay. Yeah. So I think if we can do that, if we can show how a certain moral property would make something different in the natural world, then we can have a good case. Ethical causation can be a very useful thing to any ethical naturalist. Personally, I think that doing something good, or being good, or being the the example of goodness or rightness or arte, that's from a emotional state. I think that it's very. I don't think of that as a very naturalist thing. I don't think of it as a very natural thing. I think it's not. Can't be exactly investigated in the same way because of how unwieldy it is. I might change my thought about that as I read into these ethical naturalist literatures. Who knows? But I don't know. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know your thoughts on how do you think that causation, putting a moral property into a causal network, how do you think that could possibly change, or how do you think that could, make it, how do you think that could make a case for naturalism? Did I push it? No.